We're going into the third week of autumn 2025's Magical Readathon, and I'm actually doing much better than I expected. I'm reasonably on track to finish all of the TBR books I had by the end of the month, which maybe doesn't sound like just being on track is a great achievement, but honestly, I really overshot what I thought it was likely I would get to this month. And if I manage that whole TBR, I will be incredibly impressed. I do have some books on my TBR that are for book clubs or are so late in very story driven series that I don't think they would make for very good videos without me just spoiling everything for you. Those I've kind of set aside and I'll read them and then come to a decision if I want to slip them into videos anywhere. But it does leave me with about 7 books on my TBR for the rest of the month. 2 of those are interconnected, different series, but a joined universe. I have a particular order I want to read them in, so I don't want to leave too much of that up to chance. The rest of it, however, I do. So for this round of Magical Readathon, I have already done a TBR Cup, I've already done a spinner wheel, and I thought for this one I would do a pet pick. So it didn't go brilliantly. I mean, honestly, that probably went as well as I could have expected. It was very on brand for cat behaviour. She did eventually eat one of the treats that was for Grave Expectations by Alice Bell, so that's going to be the first book that I'm picking up in this vlog. I then thought about redoing the whole pet treats, the pick a book another day, but I thought honestly the point was for, in that moment, Mab to pick the TBR, and she kind of did, she just didn't do it the way I wanted her to. She didn't eat any of the other treats, but she did have a really good sniff around Rogue Community College and eventually lay down next to Cinnamon Twisted. So I'm going to take that as being the 3-book TBR for this video. As I said, the one that I'm taking as the first pick was the one where she did actually go for the treat, Grave Expectations. I started listening this morning. I picked an audiobook while I was tidying up, and so I can tell you a little bit right now. This is a mystery novel set in England. It has a sort of cozy vibe, but not so cozy that I would call it a cozy mystery. I'm thinking along the lines of British cozies, like the Richard Osman books, maybe something like Miss Marple. We're introduced to our main character, Claire, sort of burned out millennial medium. She does seances to earn money. She's not above fudging the lines a little and playing it up, but she does actually have some psychic powers. We also meet her 19-year-old spirit guide, Sophie. Sophie was actually a classmate of Claire back when they were younger, so they're in the same generation, but obviously Claire has continued to grow up in age, whereas Sophie hasn't. And they, or at least Claire, have been hired by one of Claire's old friends to perform at her grandmother's birthday party. This means attending a house that feels very much like something you would get in Poirot, the isolated countryside English manor, and populated by a family that feel almost exactly like the characters in Knives Out. On the night before the big party, they have a private, family-only little seance, and Claire gets a feel for the different family members. We see which ones are predisposed to believe in her, which ones are actively hostile, and which ones are just kind of cynical. And we meet Nana, the matriarch, and she lets slip a few secrets about the conflicts that are already happening within the family unit. She personally wants to sell this big house before she dies, so she doesn't leave it as a millstone around the family's neck, but almost every family member objects to this idea. We also meet Sebastian, who is an ex-policeman, and Alex, a non-binary teen. When everyone wakes up the next morning, there has been a death in the night. And although that's tragic, it really isn't the murder we're here to investigate. That happens when Claire speaks to the departed guest spirit, and they confess that they think their family might have murdered someone else. So now we have Claire, Alex, and Sebastian digging into previous events, previous parties at the house, different family secrets, financial, romantic, and we're trying to uncover if they killed someone and who did the killing if so I finished my prompt for Demonology D level. I had heard really good things about it, Grave Expectations by Alice Bell, and I did have a good time with it on the whole. It's doing a sort of updated millennial version of a Poirot or Agatha Christie English country house party event, who killed the guest type of thing. Except in this one we have Claire, who is a clairvoyant, and she's been brought in to be the entertainment for the night. We are digging into this family, to all their family secrets, their financial secrets, their relationship secrets. And this is spoilery. I'm not entirely confident in the fact that the murder mystery wasn't a murder. It felt a little bit easy. It felt like we gave Claire a win that she maybe hadn't earned. I felt some of the kind of deductive reasoning was a little bit lightning strike. It just came to her in a flash. She remembered something that someone had said. It didn't feel as earned as I would have liked. And then the kind of final confrontation with the killer, again, I felt was a little easy. It kind of was handed to her a little bit on a plate by the narrative. And sometimes I think that's the thing with paranormal mysteries, is that you can use the paranormal side to bolster maybe situations your detective couldn't have got themselves out of. And I felt like that was maybe a little bit the case here, that I just didn't feel like Claire earned her win. I wouldn't rush to pick out the next book. If my library has it, I would maybe get it from there rather than buying it for myself, is maybe where I'm kind of sitting on that one. It might be something I go back to, but I'm not entirely sure. So I started and finished Dinniman Twisted by Ginger Bolton. This is, I think, the 7th book in the Deputy Donut mystery series. I started reading these because I got approved for the 8th book on NetGalley, and I hadn't realised that it was a long-running series. And I know I could have read that one on its own, but I've really wanted to catch up. It's just taken me a really long time. I think I've been reading them for maybe over a year now. But I have really enjoyed the series. We follow Emily. She runs a donut shop called Deputy Donuts. The shop is named after her cat, Deputy Donut. Emily runs it with her father-in-law. Her husband has died long before the series starts. He was a cop, he died on duty. Her father-in-law is a retired chief of police, and Emily herself used to work as a kind of a call handler. So all her friends and most of her family are involved in either law enforcement or other emergency services. By the time we've got to this 7th book, obviously, things have changed. There's some different relationship dynamics with friends and romances and things like that. But ultimately, probably all of the books really could be read as standalones. In this one, a woman that comes into the donut shop seeming like she's being harassed, she accidentally leaves behind an earring and kind of a chew toy for Depp. The story gets a little convoluted, and it has to do with Emily's house, the history of her house, the family that owned it or built it kind of generations ago, some missing treasure. There's a lot going on, and at the same time, Brett, who is kind of Emily's, connection on the force, has been sent away to do some training. The brand new chief of police is doing the investigation himself. He seems completely out to get Emily, so obviously that's what draws her into investigating herself. As I said, this one had a lot going on, and I don't think it all worked. There was a lot of the mystery itself that was really reliant on understanding the exact layout of Emily's very strangely built house. And the fact that her house is strangely built is part of that plot. So you did have to get to grips with quite a lot of the logistics, and I felt like it just kind of dragged things down a little. I did enjoy the book, but it felt more like a 3 or a 3.5 to me, whereas the series, as a rule, has been higher than that. Now, in terms of Magical Readathon, I was using this for my Q in Inscription. And the prompt for that one was to read a book with a vertical title on the spine. This isn't that, but I had used a scroll to fit it in. However, the adventure board has started dropping prompts, and one of the prompts that I caught on the adventure board was to read a book with some kind of crafting material on the cover. So I thought, because this has Depp here and she's playing with a stuffed yarn donut, I thought I could count this for that and find something else to fill that inscription prompt, because I've used a scroll anyway, so I just need to find another book. It doesn't need to particularly be a book that fits a particular prompt. The only problem with that is it does add another book to my TBR. As we're now entering the later part of the month, I am starting to get a little bit doubtful that I will complete all the books I picked for my TBR. It's not necessarily the end of the world. I did say that I wasn't massively bothered if I didn't get the qualifications in the Story Weaver and Demonologist, as long as I got the Aldean Exploration. So I said that, but I do want to. On the other hand, I really enjoy the adventure board system, and it feels like I'd like to do at least one adventure board prompt in this round of the readathon. So I think I'm going to move this over onto the adventure board, which leaves me with a space for inscription. But since the next book after this is the one that I had on NetGalley, I think I'm going to put the next book as the prompt I had this for. I'm probably going to read that next. So, Rogue Community College by David R. Slayton is the first book in, I think, the Liberty House series. The Liberty House series is a unconnected series that exists within the Adam Binder world. You can start with this one. I'll be honest, I probably should have reread the Adam Binder trilogy before starting, and I did consider it, but it didn't fit into my reading this month, and this one did, so I decided to just go for it. There were a couple of references to Adam, purely in kind of he was mentioned by name, and there were a couple of characters that filtered through from that original trilogy. We find out more about them in this, they become bigger players. But my memory of the original trilogy was sketchy, and honestly, I think if I hadn't read those books, I could have started here. You definitely will be spoiled a little bit by some of the developments in the Adam Binder books, but I don't know that it would make that much difference. You might not get the full emotional run. Obviously, I'm going to recommend you read that trilogy as well, though, because I loved it. The plot of this one ran pretty much exactly as you would expect it to from reading the blurb on the back. It is essentially an adult take on your magical school trope. I think most of the books that I have seen do magical schools for adults tend to be dark academia. And for some reason, despite the fact that for me and my little goth girl heart, I think that dark academia, I love the vibe of it, I love the aesthetic, and I love the idea of it. But when I actually read dark academia books, I just tend not to enjoy them massively. This is doing a magical school for an adult, but it doesn't have that dark academia vibe. We don't have the, hallowed halls. We don't have lots and lots of discussion of scholarship and lore. This feels a lot more like a Nevermore for adults, whether we're saying Nevermore as in Jessica Townsend's series or whether we're saying Nevermore as Wednesday. I think those two kind of vibes would give you this book. The school itself is sentient and it does have a lot of little quirky things going on. The layout moves, the doors can sometimes choose themselves, but we're focused more on Isaac and his story than any kind of real dark past in the school. He's been raised to be a super secret covert supernatural assassin, and this is kind of his last test before he fully commits, before he gets his feather tattoos that brand him as one of the Undertaker's assassins. And we're set up to believe that he is being taken to the school to protect him because he's run away. But we actually find out that he's intentionally undercover worked his way into the school because his job is to destroy the heart of the school and take it down. Isaac and all of the students have different supernatural powers. Isaac is a phage, which is a little bit like a vampire in that he occasionally drinks blood, but it's only a drop or two, and the reason for it is when he consumes someone's blood, he gets a sampling of their powers. If they have particular strength or magical abilities, he's able to tap into that. And over the course of the book, he's also able to tap into people's memories through their blood, which makes him a really good little investigator. So I can see why he would fit in well with the Adam Binder series, where we have a supernatural detective. I really loved the character and dynamics in this one, and there were definitely characters that I recognised, and I had a real emotional connection to them right from the start. The ending of the book is really, really dramatic. There's lots going on. This is a big finale, and honestly, it did have me ugly crying on my sofa. David Slayton definitely has a knack for creating characters that you really care about really quickly, and he does that here. I do think this was a 4.5 out of 5, but as I said, I think if you're going to read it and you want to get the full emotional punch of it, you probably should read the first 3 books. They're unrelated, but they will just give you the universe and a bit more of a connection. That said, my plan is to read Redneck Revenant. Redneck Revenant, yeah. Probably next week. So I reached the end of Double Grudge Donuts, and I feel such a sense of satisfaction because this is the book I first requested on NetGalley. I didn't realise it was the 8th book in the series, and although I could have just dived in, this book, like most cozies, is pretty much entirely a standalone, especially in terms of plot. There is a little bit of character development, a little bit of relationship development that continues over the course of the entire series. And obviously, you would have missed out on some of that nuance. But I could have come in and enjoyed the book just fine as a mystery, as a standalone. But I'm really glad I took the long way around. I really enjoyed this series. The Deputy Donut Mysteries has become one of my favourites. I love the donut shop. I love Emily and I love her relationships with her own parents, her in-laws. I love her best friends and their relationships and partners. I love the staff in the shop. I love Depp, who is the cat, one of the main characters, the perfect cozy companion. And I really enjoy the world we're in. The mysteries have always been fairly solid. They balance between Fallingbrook, which is the small town, and Emily's donut shop, and quite a lot of time spent in the great outdoors. Emily goes kayaking, she goes hiking, We get to see her parents. They live in an RV and travel around, so there's quite a lot of time when she visits them at the campsites. There's lots of nature in this series as well as it being the small town, which I really enjoyed. This one is set during the Fallingbrook Music Festival, which is, I think, maybe like a week-long event. And each of the days they have a themed competition. Maybe soloists one day, duets another day. There's a comedy day. There's a children's day. And the performers go around local businesses to show off and they're judged. Emily's parents have been roped in as the judges on some of these, so that gives us our kind of connection where the reasoning behind why Emily is so invested, why we're going to get to see quite a lot of these performances as readers. It also means that when one of the competitors who has been making a real nuisance of himself turns up dead, Emily's parents are in that suspect pool, and which obviously gives Emily that drive to start investigating herself. One of the things I was less keen about in this one is that we once again have a new detective coming in. The chief of police from the last book he's moved on, he's disappeared. It's not really clarified what happened, but obviously he was our villain last time, so he's not there. We have a new detective who is brought in. But we still don't get to see much of Brett, who has been Emily's police connection throughout the series. The Emily and Brett personal storyline has really amped up in these last couple of books. So it feels now like maybe the author is pulling back on him a little bit to maybe reposition him in the narrative. Maybe he won't be Emily's police connection as much anymore, and maybe we're going to bring in new characters to do that. But it means we don't spend as much time with Brett. And as I said, the relationships in this are so much fun that I'm a little disappointed that we don't see as much of him as we usually would. The plotline in this one I far preferred to Dinniman Twisted. This one had a better balance in the complexity, the having to understand the layout of things. Now, there was a couple of moments that referenced cold cases and some of the suspects' histories in Chicago, different characters that could have all been involved with the suspect in the past, but it felt far more fluid to me than the plotline with Emily's house. The only thing that I wasn't keen on is towards the end, the revelation that Emily has in terms of figuring out how the murder has been committed. It felt a little bit like the same sort of lightning strike inspiration that we got in Grave Expectations, where someone says something and it sparks an idea in Emily's head and she just comes to the conclusion that she needs to. It felt, again, a little bit unearned to me. I didn't feel like it was something that came off of any of the detective work she'd been doing up to then. Although I will give her credit that she was going off and interviewing people as subtly as possible. She was doing the sleuthing that I expect. It just felt like this revelation came a little bit easy and it was a little bit far-fetched in the reasoning behind it. It was to do with how the murderer had disposed of the murder weapon, and I felt like it was more complicated than it needed to be. You could have had a simpler solution. But it did lead to a really action-packed finale, which had a lot more drama, a lot more intensity than I'm used to seeing in most cozies. Not saying it's completely unusual, there are definitely ones that do go down this route, but this was a little bit more action-packed than the usual type of cozy confrontation at the end. And I've enjoyed the series as a whole more than I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this one more than the last book. I fully intend on continuing this series. I think this is book 8. I think there are at least 2 more currently out, and then maybe another one that is definitely in the works, I think. I completely intend on continuing the series for the foreseeable. I'm not burning out on it at all. I'm still having a great time with it. I am hoping that maybe in the next book we might focus a little bit more on some of Emily's relationships. I'd love to see more of Misty and Samantha, her best friends. I would like to see some more of Brett again, maybe him being involved in the investigation more. I liked seeing them investigate together, so that could be fun. And I would hope that we maybe stay in this more direct type of mystery to give us the time to do that. I'm hoping that the next book is maybe going to take me back to where I was with this series right at the start, where I was giving them consistent 5 stars. Overall though, still a really good book, and just the palate cleanser that I needed in amongst all of the fantasy novels that have been on my TBR this month so far. That said, next week I do fully plan on diving back into fantasy. I have the fourth Adam Binder book, which will be the follow-up to Rogue Community College. I think they are companion series in the same universe, so I don't know if it's going to be directly linked, but that is definitely on my TBR for next week. I want to chip away some more at Bury Our Bones, The Midnight Soil. I want to finish The Butcher's Masquerade, which is my audiobook. And then for my classes, I also have to pick up Nepo by Essie Hoff, which is a dystopian. The Turn of the Wheel by Catherine Labadie, which is, I think, a cozy romantasy. And then The Antlered King by Marianne Gordon, which is, I don't even want to call it a romantasy, it's a dark political fantasy with religious overtones, with necromancy, and a toxic sapphic romance going on as a B or C plot. I'm hoping that I'm going to finish them all before the end of Magical Readathon. If not, I do have some scrolls. I have points. I could buy those continuation scrolls to make sure that my character finishes her courses. But I would love to get maybe some more, if I finished early enough, to get some more time doing those adventure boards and those kind of extra prompts. But that seems unrealistic at this point. Thank you for hanging about this long. I would love to hear what you think of all of the stories I've been talking about in this vlog. I know there's been more mysteries than I would usually kind of read in a week, but let me know what you think of them. Let me know what you think of my plans for next week. And if you don't have anything in particular that you want to say, then just leave me a donut emoji for Deputy Donut. If you want to hear more from me, see more of my Magical Readathon vlogs, maybe see whether or not I managed to finish all of the TBR books I picked, then I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel for updates. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope I see you in the next video. Goodbye.